The billionaire laughed when he called her just the help, but he had no idea that the quiet single dad standing beside her was about to sign the $500 million deal that would change everything. For years, people had looked through Elena Carter as if she were invisible. She cleaned offices, carried coffee, organized documents, and worked late nights so her 8-year-old daughter could have the life she never had. But on the day a room full of billionaires underestimated her, one exhausted father saw something nobody else could see, and his signature was worth $500 million. Elena was 32, a single mother who had learned to survive without expecting anyone to rescue her. Every morning before sunrise, she packed her daughter Mia's lunch, checked her school uniform, and quietly left their tiny apartment for work. She worked as a personal assistant and office cleaner at Blackwood Capital, one of the most powerful investment firms in the city. Her salary was barely enough to cover rent, groceries, school expenses, and the growing stack of medical bills left behind after her mother's passing. Yet Elena never complained. She simply worked harder. What most people at Blackwood Capital did not know was that Elena had once studied business management. She had graduated near the top of her class, but life had taken an unexpected turn when her husband abandoned her shortly after Mia was born. With a newborn child and no financial support, Elena had been forced to take whatever work she could find. She slowly buried her dreams beneath unpaid bills and responsibilities, convincing herself that surviving was enough. One rainy Monday morning, Blackwood Capital hosted the most important meeting in the company's history. A technology company was offering an exclusive partnership that could be worth $500 million. Investors had flown in from across the country, and the company's billionaire founder, Richard Blackwood, wanted the deal signed before the end of the day. Elena had spent 2 weeks preparing documents, arranging meetings, checking figures, and quietly correcting mistakes made by executives who were too busy taking credit to notice her. That morning, Elena noticed something strange in the final contract. A tiny clause buried deep inside the agreement could cost Blackwood Capital hundreds of millions of dollars if certain conditions were triggered. She immediately warned one of the executives, but nobody took her seriously. Instead, she was told to bring coffee into the conference room and stay out of the discussion. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that someone's position in life should never determine their worth, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Spread Kindness for more stories that remind us what truly matters. Elena entered the conference room carrying a tray of coffee while 20 powerful people discussed the $500 million agreement. Richard Blackwood sat at the head of the table, surrounded by lawyers and investors. Elena carefully placed the cups down, but as she turned to leave, she noticed the same dangerous clause on the giant screen. Her heart tightened. She knew they were about to sign something that could destroy the company. Before she could stop herself, Elena quietly pointed out the discrepancy. The room became silent. Richard looked at her with disbelief before laughing. He reminded everyone that Elena was there to assist the staff, not to analyze multi-million-dollar contracts. He mocked her education and called her just the help. A few executives laughed along, while Elena stood frozen, fighting tears. But then the conference room doors opened. A man in a simple dark suit entered carrying a worn leather folder. His name was Daniel Carter. He was 38, a single father and the founder of a small logistics company that Blackwood Capital had been considering acquiring. Unlike everyone else in the room, Daniel had arrived without an army of assistants. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and there were dark circles beneath his eyes because he had spent the previous night caring for his 6-year-old son. Daniel had overheard the last few words from outside. He looked at the contract, then at Elena, and asked to see the clause she had identified. After reading it carefully, he realized she was right. The clause would allow the technology company to take control of several critical assets if Blackwood Capital failed to meet an unrealistic performance requirement within 12 months. It was a trap disguised as an opportunity. Richard's confidence disappeared. Daniel did not shout or insult anyone. He simply opened his folder and explained that his company had spent months developing an alternative logistics network that could eliminate the risk entirely. But there was one condition. The partnership would only move forward if Elena Carter was included as a financial consultant because she was the only person in the room who had caught the problem. Everyone stared at him. Richard asked whether Daniel was serious. Daniel nodded. He had spent years being underestimated himself. He knew what it felt like to enter a room where wealthy people assumed a worn suit meant an empty mind. He also knew that talent did not always arrive wearing an expensive watch. The negotiations continued for hours. Daniel presented his company's solution, Elena explained the financial structure, and together they redesigned the agreement. By late afternoon, the impossible happened. Blackwood Capital agreed to Daniel's acquisition proposal, Elena was appointed to the negotiation team, and the final contract was valued at $500 million. When Daniel placed his signature on the agreement, the room erupted in applause. But he did something nobody expected. He turned to Elena and asked her to sign beside him as the person responsible for identifying the flaw that had saved the entire deal. Elena stared at the pen in her hand. Her fingers trembled. For the first time in years, someone was not asking her to clean a table, carry a folder, or disappear when important people arrived. Someone was asking her to take her rightful place at the table. Richard approached her afterward. The arrogance had disappeared from his face. He apologized, but Elena did not need revenge. She simply told him that sometimes people become invisible because others refuse to look closely enough. Daniel offered Elena a position in his company with a salary that would transform her family's life. But Elena asked for something else first. She wanted an opportunity to build a scholarship program for single parents who had been forced to abandon their education because life became too difficult. Daniel agreed immediately. Months later, Elena stood inside a newly renovated community center funded by the $500 million partnership. Children ran through the halls while single mothers and fathers attended free business and technology classes. Mia stood beside her mother, proudly watching her speak to a room filled with people whose lives were beginning again. Daniel stood in the back with his young son, smiling quietly. Elena had not become successful because someone finally discovered her. She had been capable all along. What changed was that someone finally gave her the chance to prove it. Before we reach the final moment, if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a second chance, and subscribe to spread kindness. Your support helps these stories reach more people who may need a little hope today. And before the story ends, I want you to do something special. Comment ***, everyone deserves a chance *** if you believe that kindness can change a person's life. Years later, Elena would sometimes remember that rainy morning when a billionaire laughed and called her just the help. She no longer remembered the humiliation as something that broke her. She remembered it as the moment someone else's disrespect revealed her own strength. Because the greatest mistake people make is judging someone by the job they do instead of the person they are. Elena cleaned offices, carried coffee, and worked long hours, but behind that simple uniform was a brilliant mind, a loving mother, and a woman who never stopped fighting for a better future. And sometimes, the person standing quietly in the corner of the room is not the least important person there. Sometimes, they are the one person everyone desperately needs.